Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to have you here today. My name is Cindy McDonald. I'm an educator, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a producer of this show, the Friday Forums. This is something we started during COVID, and it's just kind of kept on going. So I've been so honored and pleased to have so many guests. I interview experts in subjects that matter to you. And we talk about education, we talk about business, and we just talk about life in general as well. And I'm so pleased to have with me today my friend and colleague. We're colleagues in arms together, Katie Anderson. So welcome, Katie. I'm glad to have you here. As everybody's coming in, please put in your name, your location, so that Katie can see where you're at, and also tell us how long you've been in business. If you are an educational consultant, that's really what we're talking about today. But if you're not, maybe it's something you're thinking about, or just something you want to know more about. So we're so glad to have you as well. And as we have people coming in, Katie, you'll be able to see all the different locations and everything that we have in our Friday Forum. This summer, we've been taking a little bit of a break, and I know I've been busy, you've been busy, you and I've been presenting, and we know that everybody else has been working and presenting and attending conferences and college visits and all those things. So we're glad to have you here. I also want to introduce and welcome back Carmen. She is she keeps everything going behind the scenes. So if you have questions or if we mention links, Carmen's the one that's going to keep things going. Also, this topic today is generates a lot of questions, a lot of comments. So we love having the comments, having you put things in the chat in the comments. I have discovered that when I go to other meetings and I'm not able to see how many people are there or see other people's comments, I've really gotten used to being able to do that in my chats. So please, I encourage you to do that. But if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, because that's where we're going to look for them. So we're so glad to have you. We've got lots of different people. It looks like, we've got Robert from Northern Colorado. I know where that is. San Diego, Chicago, Scotts Valley, Portland, Oregon, all these wonderful places. So glad to have you. And Katie, as people are joining us, can you give us a little bit of background? Tell us a little bit about yourself and where your practice is and what your specialty is.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. So my name is Katie Anderson, and I'm based in Dana Point, California, which is about halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego, out on the coast. I've been in practice since 2012. I started, like many of us, this is not my first career. This is like my third career. I actually started, I was a soccer player. So I specialized in working with student athletes. I was a soccer player in college. I played soccer at Duke University, but I grew up in Irvine, California. So after college, I moved back to California, ended up working in the software industry. And then I met my husband, and we ended up moving to Europe for many years and lived there and worked in software there. And when I came back, we had a family, and I wanted to start a business that was something I could do from home. And I kind of remembered back to my high school years when my parents had hired a college counselor back in the 1980s. He was the one guy in our area who was doing this. And I just remembered, like, that sounds like something I'd really like to do. And I'd like to work with student athletes. So I went and did the UCLA extension program, and then started my business. And as a specialist in this space, I couldn't just specialize in working with athletes right away. I kind of had to build it slowly. So I kind of started half and half. I had half my families were athletes, and half my families were just regular students. And I definitely did not work, theater kids or things that were really outside of the realm of where I wanted my happy zone. I would definitely find someone else who could work with them. yeah, I've been doing this since 2012, and Cindy has become a very close friend over the years. And I love to speak. I speak at most of the conferences. I try, at least, if I can, making proposals and try to take a role there to help educate counselors on how to do these things. But on for the reason we're here today, Cindy knows, and part of the reason why she asked me to do these things is because I'm a bit of a data junkie, and I really, really love working with software. Again, that was kind of my background originally. So I've tried almost all the packages. I'm definitely an early adopter when it comes to many of the various tools out there. And so I really feel like this is an area where we can have an open discussion around how we work, how to be more efficient, and especially for those counselors who are just getting started and trying to just evaluate how to get started. I think this is a really important topic.
Oh, I agree. And I learned, I didn't know all of that about how you got started and everything. So that's very helpful. And I think that points to, too, when we first talked about doing this survey, and those of you that participated in the survey, thank you very much. We really, really appreciated it. Because it was really the first in the industry. And I had both other organizations say, please share this results with us. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And basically it's how do you get new clients and what do you do with them when you get them? And what is there an industry standard? And what are different people doing? Because we all kind of start this and go, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is right or not, but this sounds right to me. And I know I did that when I started. I didn't know doing things in a group was not a thing. So I've always done things with students in groups. And so that's what we're going to share. And we are going to really dig into like future forecasts and what this means for our industry. So if you heard this at one of the IECA or HECA conference, you're going to hear a version of it, but we're going to delve more into the what this means and give you more time for question and answer. So let me share my screen, and we're going to do this. We're going to make this bigger, and we're going to go to the right page. There we go. All right. Now, everybody should be seeing my screen, right?
I can see it.
Okay, and we're going to switch this. All right. Okay, and oops. The only problem with this is now I don't see any of the other tools. So what we're talking about today is getting new clients, how, when, and what next. And exactly as Katie said, I contacted her because I know she's a data geek and she loves this stuff. And I couldn't think of anybody better to dig into this than to have Katie help me. So this presentation is going to be available. We also have a folder with a link where you'll be able to go and pull up this presentation and pull up other data information that we have made available from this. So, many of you know I've been doing this for over 30 years. If you've taken the UCLA classes in the last 5 or 6 years, you might have had me as an instructor. I've been a female entrepreneur, all these things that I never thought I would do, but ended up being my life's trajectory. And as Katie, as you already shared with us, being a soccer player, a Duke alumni interviewer, I'm sure people ask you about that, and also be an entrepreneur, creating groups and finding needs, managing the affinity group. Those are all things that are really important and make a difference for us. So the purpose of this survey, what we wanted to do was just see what people are doing. There's really no standard, or there's no rule book for us other than our ethics and standards, but that's more principles, that's more guiding rather than the how and what. So that was our goal of the survey, was to see what people are using for onboarding clients. So how do you get new clients and how do you onboard them once you get them? And our goal was to make this data available and create meaningful dialogue. There's one thing that, well, there's several things came out of this survey that was surprising, but one thing in particular I'll point out. And, you know, how do we bring on new clients and nurture them while also running a business? So this was part of the goal and the purpose of the survey. So we're going to cover 4 different aspects. I'm really going to just briefly talk about the respondents. All of this is, and we have addendums to these slides. So we have screenshots with all the different charts. So if you're really a data geek and you want to know all of the details, we're providing those to you. So just to give you kind of an overview of the respondents. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about just how people reach their prospective clients, what drives the next steps. And as I mentioned, we want to really have that future forecast. So we wanted 500 people to respond to this. I thought that was a very lofty goal that Katie and I were bound and determined. We got to 491. So we were very pleased that we're able to do that. And really it shows how young our profession is. As you said, you know, somebody in 1980, I mean, I know there are people, I've been doing this for over 30 years, but I was one of the few, and there were very few at that time when I started in the late 1990s. I can't even imagine how many there were in the 1980s. So our profession is very young. It's also growing. We're glad to, we've people here from Colombia, Marcia is on the call, and people from France and just the Middle East, all these different countries. So many 13 countries were represented. And this is a business-minded group. And most people, and we keep it pretty small, although that the trend and the future forecast is for bigger practices. And I know like IUCA has a group for people with large practices. So that's one of the future things that we're going to see as more and more of that. But we're all student-centered. So we're mostly people who responded. We're working with high school students and transfer students, had small to medium practice, and as they're also growing in the areas of expertise. So that's something that they covered. And on this, Katie, what did we see in terms of this emerging expertise? And I can see
so what was interesting is the green bar you can see on the far right. That is the number of people who responded to this survey who consider themselves to be generalists, meaning that they just really focus on helping students go, help them get to college, but they don't necessarily specialize in any particular area. But what we are seeing, and you can see by the bars on the left-hand side, and those bigger bars are the number of counselors who now are starting to consider athletics, college affordability, working with international students, neurodivergent students, and the visual performing arts as being sort of subspecialties within their practices and areas of expertise. And I can say that as somebody who started from day one with athletics merged together with the college counseling practice, that was a big benefit to my families. I recently met with a gentleman a couple days ago who was just getting started in his practice. And when I mentioned that this is something to think about is, the population of students that you work with, and is there a way to develop that kind of subspecialty? And it was something he hadn't even thought about because he was just getting started. So sometimes when you're just getting started, you just have to focus on getting the basics down. But think about this as you grow, the types of kids that you work with, because this is a trend that we are seeing. And I will also say that it's not for everybody, right? It's perfectly acceptable to be a generalist, but as you get to know people, I mean, the whole purpose of our networking organizations is to network and get to know people who do have these expertise, subspecialties, so that when you do have a client who needs that kind of help, you know who to reach out to. And that could be in a partnership, or that could just be a referral. So think about that as you're growing your business, and think about those, these sort of the nuances of how our business is growing.
I have to interrupt here. Is it possible to zoom out a little bit or slide left? It's getting cut off. And
Yeah, I noticed that it's getting cut off. Let's see. I think we'll have to just play with it. Whoops, everything is going. There we go. Yeah, either I have to just completely take it out, or we'll have to play with it. So, yeah, I think very few of them will have this. And if that's the case, then I'll change the format a little bit, because yeah, I'm noticing that too. And I think that that's an important aspect to look at as well, is in industry in general, we're looking at more niche marketing, personalizing, bringing things more oriented toward a particular group. But as you said, in some areas, like in my area, if I specialize, I'm going to have any clients. So I had to learn everything: sports, performing arts, dancers. I had nobody else to refer people to. So it gave me an opportunity to really become that generalist. And now I'm very happy to be able to refer people to other experts, in other areas. So in terms of marketing and in sales, the process, so we're going to go back for a second. So how do we reach prospective clients? What do we do as an industry to reach people? Well, that's part of your sales funnel. And so this is the first thing, is to get the word out, generating leads, letting people know who you are. I like to talk about the 4 journeys that we have as professionals. One is the prospect's journey, and that's what we're talking about here. And then the second part is the client's journey, and that's once you get those clients, what do you do with them? So the steps and stages can be getting the word out, generating the leads, having a conversation, nurturing and nudging those leads, and driving next steps. How do you convert that lead into an actual client? And then how do you onboard them? So if you haven't ever thought about this from a process perspective, this gives you a framework from which to look at. And this is what our data was about as well. So the question was, where do prospective clients learn about your company's services? And this is set up from most to, and I don't want to say least, but I use the terms predominantly to some, and then rarely. So predominantly, we are still a referral-based business. We are in the business of client services. And so our best way of marketing is always going to be our current and past client referrals. So do not neglect those. Those are, even people that worked with you 5, 10 years, 2 years, whatever the time frame is, those are going to become resources or ways to get those current and upcoming client referrals. So predominantly people said their future clients hear about them through referrals. And then networking, organizations, community, online, Facebook, Nextdoor, all those kinds of things. So both in person and virtual networking. And then website, social media. Some people have newsletters, blogs. I know many people have very effective newsletters or blogs that they offer. But the one thing people don't do, and we confirmed this in our conference and our session, is we don't sit and pick up the phone and do cold calls. We don't just get out a directory or pull up LinkedIn and say, I'm going to call this person. That is something people rarely do to get the word out. So that's, any thoughts on that, Katie?
No, I think just that this is probably, if you notice that the predominantly current and past client referrals, this is probably the hardest part about the getting started piece, because you don't have that yet. And
Yeah.
so this is where you do need to be maybe a little more flexible in the kinds of clients that you take on early, mostly because you just need to start building that client base and being creative with how you reach families and tell them about your services so that you can get enough, every cycle, because our business is so cycle oriented, right? You have this year of kids, and then they graduate out, and then the next year of kids comes in, right? You have to, when you're first starting, you might be taking on a lot of kids who maybe couldn't find other more experienced college counselors and are coming at the last minute. They're coming in either in the summertime or even in the fall in a panic. You might have to be open about that but give it a year or two, and all of a sudden you will have that referral base. So I think that's where, just keeping an open mind and being flexible is important.
Yeah, I agree. And it is helpful. And part of the reason we did this survey is just to find out, how are other people getting the word out? So if you haven't tried social media, or you've thought about doing a blog, this gives you some ideas of what other people are doing and what has been shown to be effective. So once you get the word out, then the next part is getting those inquiries and nurturing and nudging those leads. So this was set up in terms of 3 steps, prompting, some kind of response. People send in a form, they call the office, they send in an email, things like that. So the question was, what ways can prospective clients learn about your company's services? So most common to least common, mostly, having a contact form. A lot of people have that, and that's, a sign of the times, and it's something that streamlines your business. And least common was social media. It doesn't mean it's not used, but, and a lot of times you can use your social media to drive to that completing a contact form. So that's how you prompt people to respond. And then when you have what's called the call to action, when you send the contact form, is email the office, call the office, to learn a little bit more about the services. And especially in international areas, WeChat, social media is a big aspect, a lot more aspect, I think, sometimes than what we have. And then how do you respond? How do you nurture that lead and get them to that next step? Usually it's scheduling some kind of meeting, an inquiry meeting, an initial consultation. It can be under several different names. You can also, respond with a link to a website, things like that. Texting people back is growing. I think that's much more of a future trend. Again, using social media, WeChat and social media is another way to nurture and nudge leads. But I know, and we talked about this, and I'll have you share how you do it. But even when people call my office, a lot of times I'll text them back and say, "Oh, I got your message. Please set up an appointment to meet with me," rather than trying to call them back. So how do you handle that, Katie?
Well, and so this has been a big shift for me over the years, because initially when I got started, I always answered my phone. I was very, I felt like that was a really important part of the process. I have totally shifted and this is partly because my business has grown, and it's a management issue on my part, and I'm just one person. I don't have a team of people behind me. I'm managing all of this by myself. I actually funnel people into my my booking form on my website. I have them fill out my website is pretty gives a lot of information. And then I ask them to complete that booking form to book a 20-minute free call with me. If someone calls me, I get so many spam calls. I mean, I'm sure we're all in this boat, right? Especially with the political campaigns going the way they're going. I think I get more spam calls on a daily basis than I do client calls. So I basically don't answer my phone anymore. I let people leave I let people listen to my voicemail. And on my voicemail, I actually tell them, please do not leave a voicemail message. please text me if if it's urgent, please text me. Otherwise, please go to my website and book a 20-minute call. So I really try to eliminate a lot of that sort of back and forth, and the random phone calls was when I'm in the car and all of that. And I just try to really focus on getting them on my schedule when I have time. And that's how I have had to start managing, my own business. And it's really helped a lot. It definitely allows me to not be taking calls at odd hours and to focus on having normal business hours and spending my time wisely.
Yep. Yeah. Working smarter, not harder. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. So once people start reaching out to you and you've initiated, that contact, and you have that call to action, how do you drive the next step? So that was the next part of the survey. And what we found predominantly is that we don't leave the things to chance. We don't let the client to take control over the next steps and wait for them to, sign a contract or those kinds of things. Lead conversion is you will take control. And I see the value of that. I mean, it's our business, it's your business. You want to be able to have control over what happens next. So what that looks like is front loading the response. The question was, what information do you get from a prospective client before you follow up with them? And this is one of the things where technology makes it so much easier, is being able to have that. And so this is definitely something that you can gather as much information as you can once they've reached out to you, before you reach out to them. So the details requested range. The most common was family contact details, mother, father, student, things like that. And then the student contact. Who's the student? What grade are they in? Where do they go to school? Things like that. And that also includes other details, maybe what kind of curriculum they're in, or who referred them. And some even have surveys and questionnaires that they'll send to the families to complete. So all of those different types of details are required. And then when you're reaching out, that phone call, that personal connection is number one. And so having that phone call to say, okay, here's what I received, and let's have a conversation. Next was email, sending links, as I said, to different information, texting, social media. And a few people are doing videos, Loom's available. There are all these different tools where you can send little videos to families. I know I've done that. And so that's something we're starting to see pop up. And that's the way to do once you have that contact, then taking control and controlling what information you get and how you respond is a key thing. So I am now seeing the Q&As. Carmen, do we have some questions that we should go over now?
Yes, specifically regarding, I believe, this slide. How is this delivered?
You mean the details of it's delivered? Mostly it's delivered through, whoops, this is so touchy. Let me go back. See, there we go. It's delivered in lots of different ways. Predominantly, it's using your websites and things like calendar programs that can offer this kind of, especially like even calendar, when people are setting up calendar appointments, you can have contact information, request contact information, other details. So it's definitely being delivered more electronically. People are really getting away from the PDF fill in the blank type of thing. So
there was some clarification. How is this sent to the prospect? Sorry.
Same thing. You can, Yeah, it can be sent as an email, it can be sent as a link. Reaching out, the phone calls is the number one way. Once you get their information, call them, because sometimes you don't want to meet with someone unless you kind of want to make sure it's a good fit for you as well. You don't want to waste their time or your time. So the phone calls is still another way, but reaching out all these ways is ways that it's done. Go ahead,
I
Katie.
can add in terms of my process. And again, this might not work for everybody, but this is kind of where I am. Like I said, I funnel everyone into my website. On my website, you find a button. You click on the button and you go to a Calendly link where you book a 20-minute free phone call with me. That Calendly link asks for all of these details: parent details, contact information, student details, high school GPA, if there's a referring counselor. I try to capture as much as I can. Give me the background on the student, what sport do they play, give me, whatever details I can capture in that initial call. That Calendly link goes into my Counsel More software automatically. When it's booked, it goes straight into my software and it creates an account for the student. And I'm a Counsel More user, but there are lots of other packages out there and they may or may not have similar connections. But this is one of the things I really liked about it. So then it creates, when I have that call with that student, I literally look them up in Counsel More. All the information about the student is already there, and I paste it into a notes tab, and I just start taking notes in our 20-minute session. I don't get to take a lot of notes because 20 minutes isn't a lot of time. But at the end of that call, I know whether that student is what type of services they're looking for. And I then send a follow-up email to say, thank you for the call. And I actually send them a contract. I have one of 2 contracts that they sign, and I send them a hyperlink to a contract that I do in Adobe Sign. And that Adobe Sign is it's an autofill. The parents fill it out. It then, as soon as they say hit the sign button, it sends it back to me. I sign it. It sends it back, a fully signed copy back to them. And we're off and running on getting things done. And all of this was done electronically. And I literally had to do hardly any data entry on it. And to me, this is the efficiency piece of where utilizing software in a smart way and working smarter, not harder, is part of where we all need to go with our businesses. Because I didn't use a single piece of paper. I didn't, right? I minimized my phone calls. I had one phone call or one Zoom call with the family. We saw each other face to face. I got, a read on them and they got a read on me. And those are all really, really important things. And it's a first impression, right? And it's again, working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Katie, can you share what software app you used?
Sure, I can do that.
Stick it in the
Go ahead,
chat.
Cindy.
Yeah. And that's the thing, using technology it goes back to this principle of the more you can do to maximize the time you're doing what you want to do, which is working with students. And this applies whether you're an independent or you're in a school or a CBO, it doesn't matter what your role is, but the more you can maximize that time of really doing the work that you want to do, of working with students, all these things, Calendly, different tools, resources, using technology to support you is what's going to help you be able to do that. So that's what we're seeing in our industry. So when you're converting, so when you're sending this information, whether it's by phone call, email, whatever it is, primarily when you're trying to convert your leads, you're sending people service and pricing information. That's the thing that most people cover. And then values of practice, and then the process and biography, who are you? Why are you qualified to do this? What's the process used? That kind of thing. Parents oftentimes have those kinds of questions. And then the last thing that people share, is the benefits. And so this goes from the outer circle, the most to the least. And I want to tell you, as I've been working and one of the roles that I've had being in technology, we found that this is just the opposite of what you should be doing. And I'll share with you what that looks like in just a minute. So when you go back here, when you're sending, trying to convert your lead, you're sending them service, values, process, things like that. How are you, when you're making that call, you're answering questions and giving description of your services. This is the benefits, rates, and credentials. College knowledge is also another thing that's often covered in that call. Ethics and standards, and then contract other. Usually we're not getting into the contract and those nitty-gritty details in that inquiry. So that's where the previous chart came from, is from this question of what is the focus of the first inquiry meeting. By and large, and I was so thrilled to see this, you can see the big red circle with the slash. We're not trying to create college lists in those first inquiry calls. Sometimes parents will ask us, well, I have this child and they have done ABC, and here, what colleges should they apply to? Primarily, we do not go into that because it's not part of what the inquiry call should be. We don't know enough about the student to say, oh, well, here are the colleges that you should look. But we all have students who come up and, okay, here are the colleges I want to apply to on my phone. And of course, they're all the highly rejected schools. They're all the schools that have such, 5% or less acceptance rate, and people think, okay, we have some kind of magic wand that'll help them get into these different schools. So that's the big aspect, is answering questions and describing services. So, but when you look at this, and I'm going to have a guest speaker in October who is an expert in this, and I've had other guest speakers talk about this. When you research the psychology of consumer behavior, people do not make purchase decisions based on all the benefit, all the bells and whistles of, either software or products or services. What they're really looking at is the benefit. How are you going to help them? Are you going to make their relationship with their child easier? Are you going to help them sleep at night? Are you going to, what is the benefit you're bringing? What's the pain that you're helping to solve, or the pleasure that you're bringing? And so my recommendation, and what I have seen, in order to increase conversion, we need to flip the narrative. And it is so hard. This is the hardest thing to do from a marketing perspective. And if you have a marketing background, you can, add something into the chat. But I know from my own experience, it's easy to say, here's this bell and whistle, and here's what it does, and here's the 99 things that it does. But those may not be the things that the person that you're talking with are concerned about. So a lot of those inquiry calls should be 80% listening, so that you can then specialize and say, oh, I can help you with this. Oh, I can help you with that. So what are your thoughts, Katie?
Same thing. I mean, within the software industry, I worked in marketing. So this is a really important story, is that you have to understand your customers' needs. And the more you can speak to how you can address those needs and solve those needs. And sometimes it's not about spelling everything out for them. I often find that just having a good connection with their child is part of solving their needs, and they don't even know that, they just feel it, right? It's not like you didn't have to say it out loud. It's just part of the connection that happens when you're meeting with a family. So yeah, it's very, very important that you don't get too caught up. I mean, they all want to know about the process and the services and the pricing eventually, but you can't just start with that, right? You have to start with those other pieces.
Right. And the research shows that they make those decisions, purchase decisions, based on emotion, and then they confirm them based on data. So that service process, pricing, like helps them to feel good about the decision, but they're going to make that initial decision based on emotion. And as I've developed my process for families, as I'm working with students, in those initial consultation, and this is a first sit down meeting with the family, parents and students have to be here. They have to send me information at a time. My whole focus is on the student. And I'm finding out, well, what are you interested in? What do you know? What are your concerns? Like, oh, I can help you with that. Oh, would this help you if I could do that? Oh, would this make it easier for you if we worked on this together? I probably get affirmations from the student. My goal is to get anywhere from 5 to 7 times where the student says, yeah, that would really help me. So at the end, when I'm turning to parents and saying, well, is this something you want to do? They've heard their child already say 5 to 7 times or more, yeah, this would be really good. So we've already established the benefit, and everything else it comes very quickly and naturally. So that's something. So I'm going to move up. I can see time is moving, and I want to get to the future forecast. So let's go through here. And finding fit works both ways. We want to have clients that we want to work with, and part of doing this, if you refocus how you bring on those new clients, you're going to get the ideal clients that you want. But basically what the process shows is there's an initial meeting. The meeting length is about the same for a free or a paid inquiry session. Then you welcome new clients, send them links, put them in your system, all that stuff. Usually clients are welcome within 1 week or less. Most people add clients within 24 hours. This is when you add them into your systems, and then engaging with the client, introducing them to college planning platform, Google or other tools, whatever it is, you kind of onboard and work with your clients. So this is kind of the process that people go through. And then we've talked about technology. This is in order of least to most often mentioned in terms of what used to engage new clients. It goes from CRM, contract management, Katie, you mentioned that, communications, emails, document management, and most frequently is mentioned as a college planning platform. Fading away as paper, pen, folders. Some of us still may have that, but that's all starting to kind of fade into the background. I found this is the part that I found very interesting, is kind of how we handle the contracts, and more the next slide, which is about inquiry calls. So 80% or more of the people have no contracts before the first meeting and no payment for the first meeting. 20% of us have signed contracts before the first meeting. I mean, some of us may go and like, I didn't know you could do that. Sure, you can, and receive payment for the first meeting. So there's definitely still this getting started is before the contract is signed. Now, if you have a paid inquiry meeting, how much do you charge? Now, I am in this category. I've been charging for inquiry, or not inquiry meeting, but an initial consultation for years. I've been doing it for years. And so I find I'm in the minority. And so there are a few people, less than 20%, that charge, but you can charge. And I'm here to tell you that it works really well. And I know of consultants who weren't charging and then started charging and discovered their closure rate went up. How much they charge, 8%, was between 100 and 200. I would say this is not enough. If you're charging this, you should be charging more. You should double it. 200 to 300, 300 to 400. This is where I'm at. I charge $375 for an initial consultation, and it's a 90 minutes. So it's basically based on my hourly rate, and 3% is that 400 plus, because then people are making that commitment. And if they'll pay you once, they'll pay you again. So, and then what people do is either you can apply the full meeting cost of the contract fee, or none of the meeting costs apply to the contract fee. Very few people do that. Most people, if you charge a consultation fee, they'll apply that full meeting cost of the contract fee. I did that for years as well too, and then slowly I edged off of that. Now I don't apply it. You pay an initial consultation and then you sign a contract, and that's another number. Now it gives me the flexibility to say, oh, I'll waive this, or I'll take $100 off. It gives me some negotiating room, but I found I'm very much in the minority in this area, but I'm here to tell you that you can do it, because I have been doing it for years. So it's another way to bring revenue. Don't leave money on the table if you don't have to. So, and there's lots of reasons to or not to, and I'm sure, we'll go into that. Okay, so, what is the closure rate? Actually, as consultants, we have a pretty high close rate, 91 to 100%, 33%. So a third of us nail it, have a 91 to 100% close rate. And it goes all the way down to working on it 9%, or between 26 and 50%. You may not even know what your close rate is, and so that's a key performance indicator that we all should have an awareness of. So it's like, how many people are you meeting and how much are you closing? So what are your thoughts, Katie, on that?
I would just add that I agree that when I've done this a number of different ways over the years. And there was a time at which I did charge for that initial meeting, and they had not yet signed a contract. So I had an 1.5-hour meeting with the family, and they paid me for that 1.5 hours before they signed a contract to move forward. And I noticed significantly my closure rate, became way better. Because people had made an investment, right? There was a financial investment, and they were a little more committed to the process at that point. The reason that I have gone back to a 20-minute free introductory call is because the ways in which my business has changed, and it just makes it easier for me to manage. But I will say that, again, this gets back to some software. Having software that allows you to do this analysis for yourself and follow up with, if you send someone, if you have a meeting, you send them a contract and you haven't heard back from them, you need to be able to track who you've met with. If you haven't heard from them, send them follow-up messages, and you will find that the systemization of the way you manage your work will help that closure rate improve as well. But if you never follow up with people, then don't be surprised when you never hear from them again.
Exactly. Well, and that's why I recommend too, and I found that when I started doing this, it works so well. It's like when you have that initial meeting, it's like, okay, look over this information, get back to me, and let me know if you want to move forward. Because sometimes they're shopping IECs and all of that. Give them a deadline, set up an appointment with them, and if they're going to sign with you, they'll show up. If they are not going to sign with you, they'll make an excuse, or they won't show up. So, don't leave it up to chance. That next step is, okay, we're going to meet in a week. Usually that's what I do. That works pretty well. And tell me what you want to do. And, and then you can go over whatever options as you meet with people and talk with them. You get a feeling like, well, this service would work best for them, or this package would work best for them, or they need this and this and this. So then that way, even if you have a lot of a la carte, you're not trying to give them everything. You're just saying, here's what's going to fit for you, and they will trust your expertise as the expert. So, all right, let's go into some future forecasts, and so that we can talk about this and what this all means. And as I said, at the end of this PowerPoint, we have lots of charts and things. So if you're a data person and you want to see what these actual responses were, we've got those available. Okay, so what did all this data tell us, Katie?
So you've heard it before, and that is that we need to work smarter, not harder. Here are a couple ways. Again, we've already talked about a number of these things, but using a meeting booking app if you have not done this yet, you need to start investigating this. Even if you don't have a big client base, they're not expensive. And you really, really need to start using these tools because it will help you grow your business. It is so much better than going back and forth on text message or email about when you're available. It's the biggest waste of time ever. So make an investment in that at a minimum. Using a college planning platform. As we've mentioned, there are a number of different, really great platforms out there. And I would just encourage you that it is a professional way to interface with your clients, to let them know that you have a system in place to be able to do that. And the systems keep getting better and better. So definitely utilize a college planning platform. COVID completely changed the way that we work with our clients. I used to drive around. I mean, I was driving around to people's houses. Giant waste of time and gas and energy and everything else. So pretty much today, I'd say I meet with about 99% of my clients on Zoom. Google Meet and Teams are also options, but I even meet with my kids who live around the corner from me on Zoom. And part of it is that there are certain things when it comes to sharing college information that's just easier when you're on a Zoom call than when you're sitting there face to face. So again, it depends on the student, but utilizing Zoom as much as possible makes your life, your work life more efficient. Artificial intelligence. This is going to become, we've all been listening to all the ways in which it's going to affect our lives. And I think we all need to learn how to embrace it. I've recently built it into my college essay planning workshop, and my kids are laughing at themselves as as I'm showing them how to utilize some of these tools. And they're like, wow, I didn't even know that ChatGPT could do that. It's been a lot of fun. So I think we need to learn to embrace it for what it's good at, and also recognize what it's not good at. But utilizing it to make our businesses run more smoothly is going to be important. Obviously, recordings, whenever you can send a recording. One of the first calls I had with Cindy after Otter AI came out, and she was recording it and then it automatically sent me the transcript from our conversation. I was like, this is brilliant. Now it's searchable, right? So you can use these tools to make your business more efficient. Because again, I've worked in the software world, and I really, really want to see great connections happening with our college counseling platforms that pretty much all of them do not have a really great CRM tool, built into them. That means that I would hope, and my question and my request out to all of them is to please develop an API, an application programming interface that would allow for easier integration with some of these external tools. There's some great, I recognize that not all college platforms, planning platforms want to be CRM tools too, but they can certainly connect to them, and through tools like Zapier. So that's, for me, that's something I'm making a request to all of them. Please give us an API. And then recorded video instruction. When you send, I did a workshop for my students who could come to my workshop, and I recorded it and I sent it out to all the rest of my students who couldn't make it to the workshop. And I'm not going to repeat myself 10 times. So again, working smarter, not harder.
Yeah. I'm seeing questions and comments on the college planning platform. So I have a article, and I've done a webinar on the top 10 tips for how do you adopt new technologies. So if you're in the market for different technologies, we can send that out. But I also have user stories for all the different college planning tools, except for one, but College Planner Pro is one. People have mentioned that. Counsel More, 360 Planner is another one. Maya Learning it used to be Guided Path, and now it's owned by Maya Learning. So their new version is coming out, is being rolled out like now as we speak. And then some people use College Kickstart as a tool, a supplemental tool as well. So I have user stories for several of those on my YouTube channel, and we put a link to that. So if you're wondering about a different tool, right now, I don't know what I'm going to use. I am totally product agnostic. I am an affiliate. So I also have affiliate links for all of these tools. So if you are in the market for a new one, please use my affiliate link so that they know that your referral is coming from our Friday forums. So we'll make those available too. So you mentioned this about artificial intelligence. Where else do you see it going, Katie?
Well, it'll be very interesting. When it first came out in at the holidays, the first thing I asked ChatGPT was, give me a list of colleges that do XYZ, right? And it came up with a list of 5 or 6 schools. Well, I do believe that there's going to be more to that coming over the years. There will be better and better tools. But it can also be used to develop website content, blog content, email content. I attended a really interesting session at the HECA conference. Swami was one of the presenters and talked about how to ask ChatGPT for insightful, what if you tell ChatGPT, I'm interested in, I'm a sailor, I like engineering, and I like reading books. What does this say about me? It's interesting. It gives some really interesting things back to you that kids, oftentimes have a hard time connecting what those 3 interests would really say about them. So it helps them in the writing process, right? We obviously don't want kids writing, using ChatGPT to write their college essays, but they can certainly use it to dig a little deeper into kind of who they are and what's meaningful. And also for meeting notes. I think all of those ways, if we're smart about how we use it, it can be a helpful tool. And yeah, I mentioned college lists and personalized videos. So I think all of those things will be affected by AI, and the tools will just keep getting better.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else do you think?
So I would say that in trend, I know we're running short on time here, so I'll try to be fast. In terms of efficiency in the intake process, there's been a shift from where we used to sit as counselors and take notes on pieces of paper to we've now moved the entire that responsibility of filling out forms and things to the client. I do not want to spend my time filling out forms for a student when we're having an intake meeting, right? I give them a document through Google Docs, and I ask them to fill it out. And then when we have a meeting, we talk through those things so we can have an open conversation. But I can read in advance what that student wrote so that I am better prepared for our meeting. That just makes everything, our time is better spent and more productive. And again, charging for that first meeting may become, more and more popular as we become, more proficient at demonstrating that early value. There are some counselors out there who are even asking families to apply to be a client, which is sort of you can't do that when you're just getting started, but if you're trying to manage who it is that you want to take on as a client, being a little more selective in who you take on, that is a process that you could certainly utilize.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to our professional, memberships in our networking organizations, these are always going to be important trends, right? These are things that we always want to encourage counselors to participate in for many reasons: networking, continuing education, professional integrity. I had a counselor ask the other day who was just getting started, who was not a member of any professional organization, ask about referral fees. And I said, well, we don't do that. That's against our professional. we all sign a document saying that we won't do that. That's part of the integrity piece, within our organizations. So, those will continue to be very valuable tools for us to continue to network face to face and get to know each other and do this kind of thing, right? Get to know how we're all working, because as independent business owners, for many of us, it's very hard to know what everybody else is doing. So these are great opportunities to do that. Word of mouth and referrals from former clients are still going to continue to be a major business driver. Don't forget to reach out to your past families. To, lots of times when kids move out the door and they go off to college, you forget to reconnect with those families. And I think it's just important that a couple times a year you make that effort, because that is your referral base. It's still that trusted referral still beats Google any day of the week, right? And I think that with social media, so many people utilize social media because it's so popular, but sometimes it feels like you're yelling into the wind, right? It takes a long time to build an audience on social media. So again, working personal connections as much as you can while you're getting started is important. And then think about passive income. Another trend that we're seeing here is passive income opportunities, learning to, self-publish, create online courses. I've done both of those things. And those are really great opportunities to take your knowledge and be able to communicate it in a way that doesn't require your time, but you document it once and then you put it out there in the world for other people to take advantage of that knowledge, and hopefully provide a little bit of income on the side. So those are all important trends.
Yeah. And
Finally, I think you were going to talk about this one.
Yeah, basically, I think, we're moving from an IAC center to a client center. Right now, we still want to drive the process, but the tools and the technology and the ability to still connect while moving, maybe nudging and nurturing that lead farther along before you get involved. I see that as a big future trend. And as I mentioned, behavior research, focusing on emotions. And also I've been learning more about archetypes and building those archetypes and brands. We subconsciously are attracted to archetypes, the different types of, hero, sage, those are all archetypes. And so focusing on building archetypes and brands, I think we're going to see more of that. And we're going to see a growth in the number of clients served, because we're going to expand our capacity and growth in way of services. So those are the things that we're going to find. And here's our contact information. You can reach out to both Katie and I. And we have in the chat a link to a folder that has this and some other tools and resources available. So I know I'm going to stop sharing here. Thank you everybody for being here today. I see one question that I want to address, and we'll take a couple of minutes to do that. And then if there are any other questions that people want to bring, we'll cover that. I do want to say before we go into questions though, next Friday, join me. It'll be after the 4th of July holiday, but Tracy Badawa, she is an author, a young adult author, and she's going to come talk about, and her conversation is going to be so pertinent after the Supreme Court ruling that came out yesterday, because she's going to talk about the pressure students of color feel and the anxiety they experience in order to excel even more, than it's just that added burden that they feel. So this is part of a book that she wrote. This is not a personal statement, was the name of the book, and she's Filipino American, and so she's going to talk about that. So join us next Friday. She's a delightful person, very articulate, and very personal experiences, and she sees this a lot and has experienced this. So she's going to be with us next Friday. Okay. So Carmen, let's talk about the one question that we have here.
Okay, I see a few. Which one did you want to?
So do you find students are annoyed with using your college planning software if they're already used something at their school? Like if they have Naviance, do they want to have to relearn? Or Maya Learning also is in schools. So do they want to have to redo it with you? I think that's a really good question. I know I don't run into that as much just because none of the schools in my area use anything. So it's kind of a moot point, but I know in other areas that's definitely there can be a conflict there. So Katie, what have you found?
So I get this all the time because I have a number of families. I find it mostly with the private schools. Many public schools are, like you said, our school district doesn't use anything. But the way I approach that is that this is my business management tool. I need to know that the list that's in there for a student is an accurate list. Is a planning tool for college applications. It is a way that I track for my student athletes. I have them, for those coaches that they're having serious conversations with, I have them tracking in this database. And a lot of times they're just going to have to do the work twice, and that's unfortunate. But they're high schools that require them to use Naviance or MyLearning or some other system. A lot of that is because of the guidance counselors need to be able to submit their letters of recommendation, teacher letter of recommendation, their transcripts and things like that. So, it's not that big. I help them, I actually have them log into their accounts on our Zoom call, and I have them show me what they have to do. And once we get the lists set, it's a non-issue. It's a minor issue. And so I just don't make it into a bigger deal than it really is.
I agree. And that's what I've done with students as well. This is our professional tool. They're used to doing things all the time. They're filling out the same personal information on form after form after form. So if there's pushback, this is the way I'm being professional and saving you time. It also creates access, because then parents can see where you're at, what you're doing. So that's another good reason too. Well, let's thank you everyone for being here. Katie, thank you very much. Carmen, thanks for being here, and have a great 4th of July weekend, everyone. And come join me next week. We're going to talk with Tracy. As I mentioned, the end of July, we're going to have a panel of experts talking about neurodivergent students. April Miller, Fern Bork from Landmark College, Carol Frankenberger, just a whole group of wonderful professionals. So we'll be doing that in August. I have a whole slew of Friday forums scheduled for the end of July and into August. So thank you for being here, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.